Welcome back to my YouTube channel, where lost treasures, forgotten history, and the most astonishing tales behind the rarest coins in the world come alive. Today, we are diving into the twisting, layered mystery of a 1990p quarter dollar that, to the naked eye, looked like any ordinary piece of pocket change but would eventually become a coin that stunned the world, disrupted the balance of international finance, and sold, or rather was exchanged, in a secret deal for $681 million. This isn't just the story of a rare coin. It's the story of a secret buried within the US Mint, of a man who disappeared and returned years later with a truth too strange for fiction, and of the chain of events that led one small silver disc to become the most sought-after item in the world of covert intelligence, economic espionage, and forbidden knowledge. It all started with a man named David Kessler. A quiet, bookish figure in his late 50s, David had worked most of his life as a low-level analyst for a government agency so obscure it was rarely even named. When he retired early in 2008 under murky circumstances, he moved into a small house outside of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where he lived alone. According to his neighbors, he rarely spoke, never had visitors, and was most often seen walking his dog and reading on his porch. But what nobody knew, not even the people who had once worked alongside him, was that David had been in possession of something unusual since the summer of 1990, something he'd been quietly guarding for almost 2 decades. A single, unremarkable quarter from the Philadelphia Mint. The coin had come into his possession under strange circumstances. In the early 90s, David had been tasked with analyzing anomalous digital signatures found in certain federal data networks. These signatures were weak, ghost-like, and often dismissed as bugs. But David, meticulous and obsessive, noticed a pattern. One that seemed to repeat in 15-year cycles. The signature led him not to a hacker or a computer virus but to something far stranger, code embedded in the communication lines that had no identifiable origin. It didn't come from outside. It came from within. At first, he thought it might be some kind of encryption experiment. But then, in the spring of 1990, he received a plain manila envelope with no return address, delivered not to his office but to his personal mailbox at home. Inside was a single quarter, a 1990p quarter, dated correctly, with no visible signs of tampering or alteration, except that when placed on a high-resolution scanner, the device malfunctioned. Not once, not twice, but every time. The image would warp, the software would freeze, and each time, a strange sequence of alphanumeric characters would appear on screen. Always the same. Always random to the eye. But David knew it wasn't random. It was the same pattern he'd seen in the ghost signatures embedded in those government networks. He ran tests over and over. The coin wasn't magnetic. It wasn't made of an unusual metal. And yet, it responded to electromagnetic pulses. It reacted to temperature. It changed its frequency resonance depending on the time of day. It wasn't just a quarter. It was something else. Something that had no business being in the possession of a low-level analyst in Pennsylvania. For a year, he kept the coin secret, trying to figure it out. But as he dug deeper, he began to notice things. His phones had static even when off the hook. Lights would flicker when he entered certain rooms. At one point, his dog disappeared for 4 days, then reappeared without a sound in the middle of the night, sitting upright in the middle of his hallway, tail wagging and eyes strangely dilated. By late 1991, David had had enough. He buried the coin in the woods behind his house, 30 paces west of the old oak tree, under 6 inches of earth in a plastic box. He told no one. He retired from his job, citing stress. He isolated himself. And for the next 17 years, he did nothing. Until, in the spring of 2008, someone broke into his home, not to rob him, but to find the coin. They didn't find it. But they left a warning. Written in black marker across his bathroom mirror, "Return the signal." David dug up the coin. It hadn't aged a day. That same year, he reached out to a former colleague named Lenora Maddox, a former encryption specialist turned independent researcher. He trusted her. He needed answers. Lenora was skeptical at first, until she ran her own tests. The coin didn't behave like any known metal composite. Under ultraviolet light, a strange symbol appeared faintly on the surface, 3 interlocking arcs forming a spiral, a design not registered with any known minting authority or government emblem. Worse still, she ran a thermal scan and discovered that the coin emitted a faint heat signature. Not absorbed, emitted. And it pulsed. Every 28 seconds, like a heartbeat, word got out. A research assistant working in Lenora's lab leaked an internal memo describing the coin's behavior. Within days, that assistant vanished. His apartment was cleared out. All records of his employment deleted. The government never acknowledged the disappearance, but Lenora and David both knew what had happened. The coin had been noticed again. And this time, the people looking for it weren't just bureaucrats with curiosity. They were people with a very specific goal: acquisition and silence. The two fled. For years, they moved from town to town, staying off the grid, communicating only through burner phones and code phrases embedded in classified forums. They began piecing together a theory. According to Lenora's research, the Philadelphia Mint in 1990 had a temporary equipment malfunction in one of its high-security engraving rooms. That malfunction lasted just under 4 minutes. 4 minutes during which the automated systems produced 15 coins using a die matrix that had never been logged. The coins were immediately pulled from rotation, or so the official records claimed, but one coin had escaped. And that coin was now in David's pocket, humming faintly in the quiet of night, its strange pulse perfectly synchronized to the rotation of Earth's magnetic field. It was then that Lenora stumbled across a connection that made her blood run cold. The coin wasn't just emitting a signal, it was receiving one. In 2010, a billionaire financier named Arden Victos announced a private auction for what he claimed was a historical artifact of global intelligence significance. The bidding started at $200 million. The coin, according to rumors that leaked from inside the closed event, was the same 1990p quarter that David and Lenora had been protecting, but how had it gotten into Victos's hands? David was nowhere to be found. He had disappeared just days before the auction. Some believed he had been captured. Others believed he'd sold the coin himself. But Lenora knew better. He would never part with it willingly. She hacked into the closed auction server. What she discovered was more than shocking. It was impossible. The server hosting the auction had an encrypted log showing a list of approved bidders. Some were familiar names: oil magnates, tech billionaires, shadowy government liaisons. But one name stood out. A string of code. Not a name at all, but a timestamp. Set 5 years into the future. It was an auction with a buyer that hadn't yet existed. The winning bid was $681 million. Submitted from a digital identity that resolved to no known server. The transaction was finalized, the coin delivered, but no one ever saw who took possession. Lenora vanished soon after. 4 years, nothing was heard. Then in 2020, a brief article surfaced on an obscure science blog. It described a magnetic anomaly detected in rural Nebraska, where an unregistered aircraft had landed and departed in a span of 2 minutes. Satellite footage showed nothing. But witnesses described hearing a high-pitched ringing, followed by a low vibration that made birds flee the area en masse. The blogger was silenced. The post removed. But some say that was where the coin changed hands once again. Today, collectors still speak of it. The coin that shouldn't exist. The quarter that disrupted power grids, intercepted encrypted communications, and behaved more like a beacon than a piece of currency. And somewhere out there, in a vault beneath a mountain or perhaps aboard a jet circling the globe, is the 1990p quarter that became the world's most valuable coin, not because of what it was made from, but because of what it could do, because it was never just a coin. It was a device. A transmitter. a relic of an experiment whose origin is still unknown, whose purpose remains buried, and whose legacy continues to ripple through the most secret corners of our world, and that is the full story of the 1990 quarter dollar. The coin that vanished, returned, vanished again, and eventually traded hands for $681 million in a deal that left no trace but changed everything. If you'd like another story just as unbelievable, let me know which coin to explore next. Next, 1985 quarter dollar coin, where the world of rare coins becomes more than just a collector's fantasy. It becomes a portal into buried secrets, twisted history, and stories that defy everything you thought you knew. Today's story isn't just about a coin. It's about a legend that begins with a 1985 quarter dollar, just 25 cents in the eyes of most, but as time would prove, a piece that would be linked to one of the greatest unsolved heists in American history, secret Cold War dealings, a trail of cryptic deaths, and a transaction that would later be recorded as the most expensive non-artifact coin exchange of all time, $441 million. This is not a fairy tale. This is the kind of tale that's been whispered through locked doors, scribbled on post-it notes passed hand to hand at numismatic conferences, and followed by silence, always silence. It begins in Colorado. Denver, to be precise. In the year 1985, the Denver Mint was running on routine operations in early March that year. It was a calm, uneventful winter for most of the city, but something peculiar was happening behind the scenes. Records from that year, at least the ones accessible through normal channels, show nothing unusual. Production rates normal, security reports clean, employee logs unremarkable. But beneath the layer of ordinary bureaucracy was something unusual, a sudden, undocumented visit by officials from an undisclosed department of the U.S. Treasury, accompanied by a handful of men whose names appear nowhere on any public list. These men entered and exited the Denver facility through the East Service Corridor. No security footage, no employee signatures, and no paper trail beyond a 3-word note found on an archived interoffice memo. Private test series. That week, 24 test dies were created and used in a sealed room known only to the Mint's highest-level engineers. All records regarding their specifications have since been erased, or deliberately buried. And only one of the coins struck during this clandestine process ever made it into public hands. A 1985 quarter? Weight, slightly over standard. Surface, seemingly normal to the naked eye. But under scanning electron microscopy, layers invisible to traditional inspection revealed interlaced alloys and tiny encoded serials that shouldn't have been possible with the technology of the time. The coin's origin was known only to a handful of individuals within the Mint. But one of them, a technician named Harold Lewinsky, had a habit of keeping meticulous notes that he stored in a fireproof case beneath the floorboards of his suburban basement. That's where the mystery begins its long, winding descent into shadow. Harold disappeared in 1986. His home was left untouched, no sign of struggle, no forced entry, no valuables missing. But his records were gone. All except for a single page, one that had been overlooked by whoever had sanitized the scene. The page referenced Project Bellmark, a program supposedly shut down in 1982 following internal scandal and reorganization. Yet here it was again. A link between an abandoned covert initiative and a quarter no one was supposed to see. The trail went cold for nearly 2 decades. Fast forward to 2004. A man named Nolan Voss, an amateur coin collector and recently retired naval logistics specialist, purchased a bulk lot of old change from a flea market outside Albuquerque. Most of it was worthless, scratched, worn, bent. But one coin, a 1985 quarter, caught his attention. It looked practically new, but not quite right. The reflectivity was off. The tone slightly unusual. He took it to a local coin shop, where the proprietor noticed something even stranger: the sound. When dropped, the coin rang with a tone slightly sharper than standard quarters. That shouldn't happen. All coins of the same denomination, especially modern ones, were struck to rigorous specification. Slight differences? Sure. But a different tone altogether? That was a red flag, or a gold one, depending on your perspective. Voss sent the coin to a private metallurgy lab in Seattle. What they found baffled everyone involved. Embedded within the coin's metallic structure was a microfilament lattice that defied contemporary science, more like the kind used in aerospace engineering than anything produced by the Mint. But more alarming was what that lattice contained: nanowires configured in a manner consistent with early prototypes of biometric data carriers. In short, the coin might have been designed to store, potentially even transmit, information, encoded into its physical structure. Word spread quickly through the underground collector's circuit. Voss received anonymous calls offering millions for the coin. At first, he dismissed them as hoaxes. Until one night, someone broke into his home, bypassed his alarm system, opened his safe without a trace, and took nothing but the coin. But the coin didn't vanish forever. It reappeared in a place no one expected: an evidence locker in a rural police station in Montana. Officers had picked it up following a raid on an unlicensed storage facility suspected of housing illegal munitions. The storage owner had vanished. But in a locked drawer was a velvet pouch containing only that quarter and a note written in block letters, "For the right eyes." It ended up in federal custody, and once again, the trail went dark. Officially, the coin never existed. But behind closed doors, factions began to circle. Intelligence contractors, defense labs, private collectors. All with different theories, but all willing to pay astronomical sums. What was it about this single 1985 D quarter? Some believed it contained the biometric signature of a Cold War asset long presumed dead, a signature that, when verified, could access dormant accounts spread across offshore networks holding billions in black budget funds. Others claimed the coin was linked to the infamous Nevada Vault incident of 1986, where an entire underground research facility was supposedly shut down following a breach involving experimental quantum communication devices. Still others whispered that the coin held the last clean data sample from the Bellmark Project's AI trials, an early attempt at encoding decision-making algorithms into objects that could be physically transferred without risk of digital interception. By 2011, an anonymous intermediary representing a heritage preservation trust placed a formal offer of $441 million for the coin, on the condition that no questions be asked, and no analysis conducted post-transfer. The deal was completed within 48 hours, but here's where the story gets even stranger. After the exchange, the coin was never seen again. No records. No insurance claims. No press. No trace. Yet over the next 6 months, multiple high-level government systems across 3 continents experienced brief but simultaneous data disruptions traceable not to a hacker, but to a buried code routine with a digital fingerprint matching the metallurgical ladder structure once observed in the quarter. In other words, the coin may have been a key, a trigger, a dormant failsafe activated only once transferred to specific hands. In the years that followed, 3 of the original engineers who had worked at the Denver Mint in 1985 passed away under mysterious circumstances, 2 of them reportedly from sudden aneurysms, 1 from a car accident where brake failure was later ruled mechanically impossible. Another technician, who had relocated to Argentina under an assumed name, was found in 2016 in a locked room, dead from apparent self-inflicted wounds, though no weapon was ever recovered. Next to his body was a coin identical in appearance to the 1985 D piece, but melted beyond recognition. Whether it was the original, a duplicate, or something else entirely remains unknown. Some believe that only one 1985 D quarter was part of the Bellmark test die run. Others believe there were more, and that they remain out there, scattered in drawers, jars, or beneath floorboards, each carrying secrets far beyond their metallic worth. What's certain is this: the 1985 D quarter that surfaced in Albuquerque, that vanished and reappeared and ultimately fetched a price worthy of a national treasure, was not an accident. It was designed. Engineered. Planted into circulation like a message in a bottle for only the right recipient to find. It traveled through unknown hands, passed quietly through history, and ultimately became one of the most valuable and dangerous coins ever created. If you've got spare change lying around, maybe it's worth a second look. You never know what you're holding. Maybe it's just a quarter. Or maybe, just maybe, it's the next story waiting to be told.